June 1st is rapidly approaching, and we'll finally be able to get into the early launch of Diablo 4 prior to June 6th. Many of us have played through one of the 3 beta weekends and are still deciding which class to play, let alone which build. In this video today, I'll be starting a quick series of theory crafting some early leveling builds for Diablo 4's launch. Today's class is our Barbarian Hammer of the Ancients build. Now, as just a quick disclaimer, these are, of course, theory crafted builds and will more than likely change once any balancing changes have been made on launch or shortly after. I'll be making more guides in the future, so be on the lookout for those. If this is your first time on my channel, the way I do things here is by front loading the info in my videos so you can decide if this is the video for you. Now, since this is a per level guide on which abilities to take, you can find the entire build linked in the description and the pinned comment. Unfortunately, the site doesn't have a per level point breakdown yet, but you can roughly follow whatever path makes sense for you. You can quickly navigate to any part of the video that interests you the most using the chapters in both the timeline and the description. And lastly, please don't forget to follow me on Twitch, where I will be streaming Diablo 4 as well as plenty of other games linked in that same description and pinned comment. Let's get started here on my Barbarian Leveling guide for Diablo 4. So just to quickly talk us through on a high level what this build was about before we jump into the per level breakdown, we're pretty much going to be using Lunging Strike as our basic attack, Hammer of the Ancients as our core attack, followed by both Rallying Cry and War Cry. Our movement spell is going to be Leap, and then we're going to be kind of polishing things off here with our, there we go, Call the Ancients, as well as Unbridled Rage for our keystone, our final one there. So that's how the build works on a per skill basis, and basically what we'll be doing is using our Lunging Strike to build up tons of Fury, in which case we will do a massive Fury dump with Hammer of the Ancients, using a ton of synergies built in from Unbridled Wrath and other Fury generating situations to make it so that we do a massive amount of damage with our Hammer of the Ancients. Now, we will be doing a lot of bleed play, but not as directly as, say, making a Rupture and Flay build, which is another kind of build to go through. But we will be using bleed to slow things down as well as do some additional damage to them. But that is how the build works on a very high level, just to kind of give you an idea of what it's like before you even jump in. I didn't want you to waste time in the video if you're thinking about, this build doesn't really work for me. If Hammer of the Ancients is not the ability you want to use, then trust me, it's not going to be for you. And why we're really focusing on Hammer of the Ancients here is that it has the highest lucky hit potential for per Fury cost, as well as Lunging Strike matching that as well. Both have a nice 50% damage, or a 50% lucky hit, and Hammer of the Ancients is going to be a massive amount of damage coming our way from Unbridled Wrath, which, if you don't know what that does, here it is. Core skills now deal 135% increased damage, but now cost 100% more Fury. So we're going to have 70 Fury cost on our Unbridled Rage, but we're going to be doing substantially more damage. And I'll be breaking all this down and talking more about it throughout the build. But this is the build on a high level. I wanted to give you a quick breakdown here. Now, of course, there are other builds that you can go that are going to be maybe more optimal. And you'll find when I do these videos, I'm not necessarily choosing the most optimal min-max option. I'm choosing one that I personally would play, or I probably think is a little bit more fun. Another example of this would be when we do the Necromancer video, I won't be doing the the Bone Spear, which is kind of widely regarded as the best build for Necromancer almost in the game period. I'll be doing the Blood Necromancer because I think it's more fun for me personally. So I just want to have that quick little overview of the build. So let's jump on into that per level basis. So now that we've gone through just kind of an overview, let's go through the per level choices here. So for level 1 and 2, we're going to choose Lunging Strike. Then that's going to open up our next category. We're going to go ahead and put a point here into Hammer of the Ancients, and then the next point into Enhanced. So we're level 5 right now. So we're going to drop another point now into Furious Hammer of the Ancients. And the way that this works here is Hammer of the Ancients deals 1% additional damage for each point of Fury you had when using it. So you basically get this as a damage bonus on top of Hammer of the Ancients, enabling you to use any kind of excess Fury as a way to kind of get a little Bustamante there. So what we're going to do is we need one more point before we can jump into the next category. We're going to drop it here into Battle Lunging Strike. So Lunging Strike inflicts 20% bleed damage over 5 seconds. It's not huge, but what we're going to do, we'll talk about how bleed really comes back into this build in a really big way. Now, the optimal choice here is probably Combat Lunging Strike, but what I'm trying to do is give you a pure leveling build that does not have any straight up gear in mind, at least up until this point. In the future, you can probably pivot these things around, but I'm assuming you don't have any gear. And I'm assuming you're not building towards a specific stat like crit strike damage, crit strike chance, anything like that. Probably crit strike chance, probably a sick music genre. But moving here now into our next category, we've got Rallying Strike. or I'm sorry, rallying cry. So we're going to pop a point here and here. And then we're going to go into tactical rallying cry because this generates 20 fury and then helps with resource generation as well. Of course, fury being the thing that gets a bonus here when we go into Furious Hammer of the Ancients. Now we need 2 more points to get to the next area. And we're going to put 2 of those points here into Hammer of the Ancients. Now, if you're familiar with playing Diablo 2, what's the kind of way you approach Diablo 2? Is you typically find that one ability that creates a lot of synergy in your build early in the game and you max it out. Or you make a leveling build where you max out certain points very early, get them to 20, and then respec. In Diablo 4, it's not like that. In fact, there's far more, as Mr. Llama SC would say, one-point wonders in this game with little investment needed and a lot of points into one ability. But all of your core abilities across all classes, the first 2 points are the most impactful versus the last 2 points are where damage starts to fall off. Yes, it says 5, 10, it goes, if I put this at 1, it goes 5, 55, 60, 65, 70, but there's a percentage drop off in actual damage. I think it's something like 15 to 12.5 to 10 to then like 6.5 and 3. I don't know. There's an actual number crunch behind it. But basically, the first 2 points you put into all your core skills and all your class give you the most damage return. So we'll come back to finish this off much later. So we've done this now. We've now opened up our next path. And this is where we want to get our movement ability ASAP, which is Leap. Then our next ability, now that we're at level 13, see, we're not really far into the game. We're going to jump over here into Warcry. So we pretty much have our bar now maxed out with any abilities that is going to be on it, for the exception of Call of the Ancients, which is going to be what we'll put on much later. Now, at this point in the build, if you want to invest a point into something else to try it out, please, by all means, do it. This is the beginning of the game. Learn your class, learn what abilities you like. I cannot stress that enough. Follow my video, sure. Follow anyone's video, great. But figure out what abilities you actually like that fit the flavor and play style of how you want to play the game. I cannot stress that enough. So that we've done Leap, I'm going to end Rallying Cry, or Warcry, sorry. I'm going to put another point here into Enhanced Leap, and then we're going to go here into Power Leap to, again, just gain Fury. Fury is going to be such a big thing for us because it's such a good damage boost. And I like to do this first because this gives me some movement capability, and I want to really focus on moving as fast as I can in Diablo or any action RPG because I'm moving around a lot. Into Warcry now. This is a Bellow of War, my Mighty Warcry, increasing your damage dealt by 15% for 6 seconds and nearby allies for 3 seconds. Well, now I'm going to make it so that I get Berserk because we needed 1 more point to get into the next region. And now we've unlocked the weapon masteries. So by and large, I guess it is like unanimously decided that the weapon masteries are kind of not that amazing in this game at their current state right now. So we're actually going to completely bypass putting any points into any of these hard actionable abilities in this. Instead, we're going to put points into our passives now. So we're going to drop a point here into Booming Voice. In fact, are we? Yes, we are. Putting a point here into Booming Voice. So your shout skills effect duration is increased. But now we're going to invest points into Raid Leader. 1, 2, 3. So this will make it so that anytime you shout, it heals your allies for 3% of their max health. Because looking at this, we're now at level 21. And this allows us to give us a little bit more sustainability. What you're really going to find with Barbarian is around levels 0 to 20, you're going to struggle a little bit with survivability. You're probably now just hitting a baseline and a little bit of stride where you get a real nice way to kind of come online and maintain good damage. So, and also a good survivability. So you've got that going for you. So that kind of gives us that little ability right there. Let's go over here into Pit Fighter to deal some additional damage. We're going to put 2 points into that. And then the last point before we jump into Call of the Ancients is kind of like this piece that turns everything on. And it is Hamstring. So your bleeding effects now slow enemies by 10%. And that doesn't seem totally crazy and good and cool, but let me explain this further. So we're going to go up here. And we're at level 24 right now. So we're going to go to Gears and Skills. And I'm going to fill out the rest of this in just a little bit. But the big thing we want to figure out is your technique, right? Your technique, because you're a barbarian, you get to choose an expertise in a bunch of different weapons. So what we're really focusing on is the two-handed sword expertise. 20% of direct damage you deal is inflicted as bleeding damage over 5 seconds. That's massive. So pretty much everything you hit now is bleeding. And that is pretty crucial. And you can choose whatever you want up to this point. You know, level 15 or 12, or I think 15 is when this unlocks. So 15 to 24, do whatever one you want. By and large, I still kind of think this is a really good one because it's very passive. The other ones require you to build into it, like vulnerability and crit strike, or this one into berserking because you need to do two-handed mace to get all the bonuses, or berserking to get all the bonuses here, all that stuff. So two-handed sword is probably the best one to jump into right out the gate. And we then are going to stack this with a ring, or with an aspect called Aspect of the Umbral. Restore 1 to 4 of your primary resource when you crowd control an enemy. Slowing counts as crowd control. So you're basically going to bleed and crowd control everything at the same time. So you're constantly getting resource generation from Aspect of the Umbral. Now you get Aspect of the Umbral in the Dry Steppes. So that is, I believe, Act 3. So that's going to take a little time to come online, but you're still going to get a lot of benefit of this from using your two-handed sword. And a gem in your weapon, you want to put a sapphire because now you're going to do crit damage to all crowd-controlled enemies. So you're basically stacking up this ability to do bleed damage, which results in crowd control, which results in all these windfalls from other aspects and other things. Now, I'm going to come back to this in its full-on section, but it's worth explaining at this point in the video because it's so relevant to how the rest of the build pulls out. Jumping back into the build, I don't know why I said pulls out, but I did. We're going to put our next 3 points right here into Call of the Ancients. Now, Call of the Ancients is an amazing ability because basically these three, the same Ancients you're calling from the fight in Diablo 2 on Ariat Summit. Korlik, Talik, and Matawak, or they're just going to come and just destroy everything. They can basically solo a boss. They're so damn good. Another big one that people usually go with is Wrath of the Berserker. Play with both if you want, but I like this one the most. And now we've got 7 points to basically spend until we can get into the big one down here with Unbridled Rage. Now, Hamstring is a 1-point wonder. We just did it to turn the ability on, as it were. And how we're really going to do this here is I want to save 3 points. So right now we are at 27, right? So let's put a point now, finish off Pit Fighter. We've got 6 points. So we're going to put 1 point here into Booming Voice and 2 points here into Guttural Yell. So your shout skills now cause enemies to deal less damage. So your shouts are a super big utility for you at this point. They're really, really helping you out, doing a ton of stuff. And with our next thing, with Unbridled Rage, we are going to start becoming Fury Starved. And that's where we're really going to jump up back here all the way to the beginning. We're level 31. We're going to put 3 points here into Endless Fury. Basic skills generate 15% more fury when using two-handed weapons. And that's the name of the game with this build, is two-handed weapons, of course. So now that we're all the way through the list, we can do our capstone, and that is Unbridled Rage. Core skills deal 135% increased damage, but cost 100% more fury. So like I said, Hammer of the Ancients now costs 70 fury. So like I said, we'll be Fury Starved. So this helps us out with all the things we've gotten up to this point. And now the build, for all intents and purposes, is complete. You could go ahead and do things in a whole bunch of different ways, but I'm going to show you how I would finish this out from this point on. So coming back up here, I want to finish off Booming Voice, and I want to finish off Guttural Yell. Your shout skills now deal more now. Actually, you know what? We're going to backtrack that. I just realized what we did. I want to finish off Hammer of the Ancients. Since we are so Fury Starved, we might as well get as much damage as we possibly can from Hammer of the Ancients to really maximize what's going to be happening for us at level 37, right? Because we're coming up on world level 3 or 4, or whatever Nightmare is. And you should be playing through the game on world level 1. I know you're probably thinking, well, that's easy. Why would I want to do that? Almost everyone has said, like Mr. Llama SC and all the other big Diablo content creators, that there's really no point to leveling in world level 2 unless you want or really need an added challenge. Because the game unlocks once you reach level cap, right? So you want to get to level cap with world level 1, which really gets a little bit less experience, but you can clear things reliably, quickly, and actually succinctly, so you don't have to keep backtracking on yourself. But we will hit Nightmare, which is going to really just increase the difficulty on us, and we're going to really do some things to help figure that, mitigate the damage we're going to be taking just a little bit. So at 37, we're going to pop a point here into Booming Voice, and then a point into Guttural Yell, just to figure out our yell situation, have it all kind of squared away. And we're at 39. So here's where we start to get a little bit more defensive now. So we're going to put points here into Imposing Presence, getting us up to 15% additional max life, and then 3 points here into martial vigor. Damage reduction against elites is increased by 9%. Once you get into Nightmare, DR, or damage reduction, is going to be extremely important for you because this is how you're going to mitigate a lot of the damage you're going to be taking from these big, heavy hitting, scary, big, huge things. And we have how many points left? 14 points, so we have quite a bit that we can still spread around, and we're at 45. So a lot of what has been done has been done. We're really kind of like capstone a lot of this stuff. So what we want to start doing here is figuring out some of the other things. So since we're coming into Nightmare pretty soon, we're going to go ahead and drop a point here into Mighty Warcry. This is going to give us the ability to fortify. And we're going to further increase this with Thick Skin. Each time you take direct damage, gain 1.2% base life as fortify. So that gives us a little bit of defensibility, a little bit of defensive play into our build and gives us a little bit more staying power. And if we look at this, we have 10 more points. I've got 6 there and 9 there. Oh, okay, now I was like, where am I putting my points? We're going to go into a little bit more damage with heavy-handed. So while using two-handed weapons, you deal X% increased crit strike damage. So this is 15% increased crit strike damage. And with that, we're going to finish off the build over here with aggressive resistance. Gain 3% damage reduction while berserking. Because we will be berserking more at this rate, we probably have the chance to actually crit and get more berserk online. Remember, Rallying Cry, because of enhanced War Cry here, I'm sorry, not Rallying Cry, War Cry here, it will allow us to instantly berserk. So we get this ability to get DR while we're berserking, which is very nice. And we get, while berserking, Fury generation is increased by 6%. So Prolific Fury is further increasing our Fury generation, which I've already said we're going to be pretty starved with. So you might as well go here to give yourself more Fury, really kind of get the most out of berserking. So we should be level 50, and then you see this parenthetical 9. Here, we'll put our last point here into swiftness for movement speed. You could put that last point into whatever thing you want that you think you want to go into, but I just like movement speed. You probably could have done that earlier in your build if you really wanted to, but I think swiftness is pretty nice. So now that we've finished off the build, we're at level 50 with that 10 parenthetical notation. Now what that means is level 50 is the cap of the game as far as earning points. After that, you will earn Paragon points, and that's a whole different system and conversation. But the parenthetical notation of 10 there is telling us for any kind of zone abilities, zone unlocks, map unlocks that you get additional skill points, anything like that. You basically have 10 additional skill points you'll get throughout the campaign that you can then invest. So now we talked about the skill tree, let's pivot back into gears and skills. Moving into our conversation on gears and skills, it's obviously not going to make sense to talk about set gear items to choose right now. We don't really know anything about that, and really honestly, uniques don't really matter until 50 or later. So any uniques you get, don't hold on to them and think you're just going to really use those the most that you can. You always want to be upgrading your gear. It's absolutely crucial in your leveling of Diablo 4. So if you get a unique and you enjoy using it, but then you get a rare item that's better down the line, just swap to it and then break that unique down for its aspect. Because remember, the aspects that you get on uniques and legendaries for that matter, they are not the same all the time. They have intervals in which they roll, right? If I look at aspect of the Umbral, it says 1 to 4. So you want to make sure that you are breaking down all those items that you can to get the aspects off them as fast as you can. And the big thing you want to do here is, before we even talk about aspects, is you want to focus on your bludgeoning weapon the most. Remember, we are using lunging strike, which doesn't matter, any complete arsenal weapon, any of your 4 options, and Hammer of the Ancients, which uses a 2-handed bludgeoning weapon. You want to focus 100% on constantly swapping out your bludgeoning weapon for the best possible one, because that's where the majority of your damage is going to be. So what we want to do now is talk about our aspects. And the first aspect that you're probably going to get access to here is the eluding one, eluding aspect. So this is in the Fractured Peaks, which is Act 1 in Caldera Gate, which is in the upper left corner of the map. But becoming injured while crowd controlled grants you unstoppable for 4 seconds. This effect has a 40 to 20 second cooldown. Now, the reason I like this one is because it's a really nice ability to kind of auto save you in a bind. A lot of people go with stuff like ghosting aspect and stuff like that, which is whenever you are talking to someone and you really don't like them when you just stop responding to their text messages. But outside of that, what I don't like about the ghosting aspect is that it pretty much, I don't even remember the name of it. I think, yeah, Ghostwalker aspect, is that this is a little too active. I mean, you kind of just have to be a little bit more mindful. Maybe if you're coming into this as more of a layman or casual player, I think that eluding aspect is more of an auto get out of jail free card. That's the way I would approach it. The other one is definitely there for you, but I think I like eluding aspect a little bit more. Now, for another option here, into the same location, we have Unrelenting Fury. This is going to be put onto a ring. This is killing an enemy with a core skill, refunds 10 to 20% of its base fury cost. Can only happen once per skill cast. So this is a nice early aspect that you can get on to help refund some of your fury costs that you might be spending. Help put that back into your pocket there. Now, as we progress into Act 2, we are going to want to pick up another one, and is its Ancestral Force here. Hammer of the Ancients quakes outwards, dealing 32 to 50% of its damage to enemies. Now, if you're in Act 2, at this point, you're beyond level 15, so you should make sure that you definitely have the two-headed sword aspect equipped. And remember, you're around probably level 24 to 20, maybe around, you're sub 30, or just under 30. So that means at this point, you definitely have hamstring activated if you followed this on a per level basis. So this is where all this is going to come together, right? You're doing Hammer of the Ancients, you're doing a ton of damage, you're now bleeding all those things, and those things are bled, so that you're going to be able to get as much benefit from them as possible. Because once we get into Act 3, we'll get the aspect of the Umbral, but we're not there just yet. One of the last things you want to pick up here in the same location is the Edge Master's aspect in Act 2, right in Skullskin. So skills deal up to 10 to 20% increased damage based on your available primary resource when cast, receiving the maximum benefit while you have full primary resource. This sounds very similar to this, doesn't it? So you're kind of basically stacking this ability to increase your damage with your primary resource generation. So this is really how we get a ton of synergy going with a lot of these things in together. So we put the aspect of Ancestral Force onto our slashing two-handed weapon. And the reason behind that is you're using that two-handed weapon as basically a stat stick. You don't need to upgrade that at any kind of regular frequency because you're really upgrading your bludgeoning weapon where all the damage comes from, remember. So this is just used to keep the aspect on board your character while you're slamming things apart with whatever bludgeoning weapon you have going for you. So those are some of the really big aspects that I recommend that you go with. I think it gives you a lot of really good early gameplay. Once you get into Act 3, you get aspect of the Umbral, like I was saying, and that just kind of turns on the rest of the build and it's like the final kind of click into the slot for you. For your armor gems, I would go with rubies just to increase your max life. And then jewelry, I'm always a big fan of increasing all res with diamond. A lot of people have been going with skull because of an armor increase. Now, I don't think armor's great, but I don't, maybe these are much larger, more intelligent content creators than I am, and they have been going for skull and armor, so there must be something that armor gives you in this game that I haven't quite seen yet, but you go with either diamond or skull in your jewelry slots to give either all res or armor. But this is how I would do this build 100% for you, and you can find this again linked in the description below for easy reference. You don't have to jump through this video and find where I said something. You just have it all right here for you. So if you have any questions or any comments on this build, hey, you know what? I really like what you did here, but I'd rather you went with this passive instead. Obviously do that for your own gameplay, but explain yourself in the comments to help people understand maybe that passive selection fits their playstyle a little bit better. As always, guys, use any one of these guys that you watch on any content creators YouTube channels as a kind of a loose guideline on how to play the game. We are booting this game up all for the very first time, so make sure you play in a way that really excites you and really keeps you coming back into the game. For example, I hate whirlwind style of play, so I won't ever really play those, even if that is the big flavor of the month build. Play whatever you like because it's your game and you got to get the most out of it, because playing a min-max build is just going to make the game easy for you. This isn't necessarily min-max, it's just me kind of having the most fun with this setup. But as always, guys, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.